My name is Roberta Dewar. I am 67 years old. 3 weeks after I buried my husband in Oakville, Ontario, I sat in a lawyer's office on Lakeshore Road East and found out what 41 years of marriage looked like on paper. The house on Bellwood Crescent went to my son. 4 bedrooms, a finished basement, a kitchen. My husband spent 6 months renovating in 2019, with quartz countertops and a gas range I had chosen myself. The appraiser had valued it at $1.3 million the previous April. My son sat to my left in a gray blazer and nodded slowly when he heard that number, the way men nod when they are confirming what they already expected. I got the cottage. 42 Lakeview Drive in Haliburton County. 1 story, maybe 900 square feet if you counted the screen porch, assessed at $64,000 with a soft spot in the kitchen floor and a wood stove nobody had lit since the Cretin government. 4 hours north on Highway 35 through Minden. The municipality stops plowing the last section of Lakeview Drive on December 1st. My son did not laugh. He has never been a man who laughs at the wrong moment. He does something more careful. He arranges his face into an expression of concerned practicality that he has been wearing since he was about 19, and he says the sensible thing. "Mom," he said in the parking lot outside the glass doors of Prentice and Carlaw, "you know I love you, but be realistic. You can't winter up there alone. Your knee's been bad since March. That road doesn't get plowed. If something happens to you in January, nobody finds you until the snow melts." I did not answer him. I stood there and thought about one thing, and it was not the insult. It was the way he said it. Measured, pre-considered, the way a person talks when they have rehearsed the sentence at least once before. Welcome to Fierce Mom's Stories. This is where the women who get handed the cabin do something about it. I want to tell you who I was before that parking lot, because it matters. I spent 33 years in a beige office building on Spears Road in Oakville. I am a CPA, Chartered Professional Accountant. I did the books for 14 small manufacturing companies over the course of my career. Injection molding shops, a gasket supplier, a company that made replacement parts for agricultural equipment that nobody in Southern Ontario uses anymore. I started in 1988, and I retired on a Thursday in June of 2021. What I know about numbers is this: they do not lie, but they hide. A set of books can be perfectly correct and still conceal the thing that matters most. The question is always what is not on the page. Hugh Dewar installed natural gas lines for 30 years. We married on a Saturday in September of 1983 when he was 28 and I was 26, and he had a laugh that started somewhere behind his sternum and took a moment to arrive. We bought the house on Bellwood Crescent in 2001 for $287,000. He had a stroke on a Tuesday morning in March in our kitchen while he was making toast. He was 69. He died on the Friday. My son Mitchell is 42. His wife Tamara is 38. She is a real estate agent at a brokerage on Kerr Street. She arrived at the visitation with a leather planner open to a tabbed section, and when she set it on the pew beside her, I saw the tab label. It said Admin, Estate. Hugh's will named Mitchell as estate trustee. He had signed it in the winter of 2022, at Prentice and Carlaw, while I was at my sister's in Guelph for the weekend. He told me afterward it was routine paperwork, 40 minutes, and the parking on Lakeshore was impossible. 3 days after the will was read, I came home from the pharmacy, and the code on the front door keypad had changed. Tamara was in the kitchen with a tile sample board propped against the island. She looked up and said, "We had the code reset. Security company sent a notice. New one's on a sticky note on the fridge." She said this the way you say it to a house-sitter. Not to the woman who had chosen those cabinet handles in 2019 while Hugh stood beside her in the showroom saying, "Whichever one you like, Rob, they both look fine to me." There was no notice from the security company. I checked the account online that evening, sitting in what had quietly become the guest room, and there had been no communication from Alarm Force in 11 days. I took a screenshot, put it in a folder on my phone, and named the folder November. 2 weeks after that, Mitchell sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where Hugh had eaten breakfast for 22 years, and gave me a date. October 15th, Mom. We need the house empty before the renovations start. We want to be done before the holidays. I asked where he thought I was going. He said, I had the cottage. He said it the way you say something when you consider the answer self-evident. That night, I did the arithmetic I did not want to do. My CPP is $940 a month. Old age security is $680. My small pension from the accounting firm pays $1,100 a month. $2,720 total. I found a one-bedroom apartment in Oakville, listed that week at $2,100. I found that out in 11 minutes on my phone, sitting on a bed that had been mine for 22 years. Then I did what I always do when a problem will not close. I went and looked at the original. I pulled Hugh's copy of the will from the folder Mitchell had left on the counter, and I read my clause again. To my wife, Roberta Dewar, I devised the property at 42 Lakeview Drive, Haliburton County, together with all subsurface rights, mineral interests, and staking claims registered in my name or the name of my father, Douglas Albert Dewar, situate in the District of Cochrane, Province of Ontario. I read that clause 4 times. Hugh wrote grocery lists in abbreviations nobody else could decode. He would not have paid a lawyer to draft a clause for something that did not exist. I have a burgundy hard-shell suitcase I bought in 2004 for a trip to Newfoundland. I packed it on the morning of October 5th. 7 changes of clothes, blood pressure medication, reading glasses, a box of green tea, and the portable hard drive with 30 years of client files that I keep out of habit. I left the good dishes. I left the reading chair that had been moved to the front hallway. I thought about that chair for about 4 seconds and let it go. I left Oakville at 8:15, Highway 400 North, then 11 East, then 35 through Minden. The Tim Hortons in Minden was the last one for 40 minutes. I stopped for a coffee and sat in the parking lot longer than I needed to. I cried somewhere past Barrie, which was somehow both appropriate and insufficient. 42 Lakeview Drive is the second-to-last property before the road becomes a trail. I arrived at 12:40. The lake was flat and the light was that low copper color you only get in October up north. The cottage looked worse than I remembered. Soft porch boards. One shutter angled outward like a broken wing. Moss on the north face of the roof, thick enough to look intentional. The lock was stiff. I had to push with my shoulder. Cold wood smoke, old stone, 40 years of the same wool blanket. The propane wall heater in the corner clicked 3 times when I turned the knob, the pilot catching, and then the quiet exhale of the flame. I have turned that knob every autumn for 25 years, and it has always sounded like a small decision being made. And then I saw what was on the kitchen table. The table is pine, 6 feet long, with a water ring from a coffee mug that has been there since at least 1994. It was clean. Not clean like last week, clean like someone had wiped it carefully, and then nothing else had happened in that room. In the center of it sat a blue metal lockbox with a combination dial. Hugh had kept one under his desk at home for years, and I had never once opened it, because it was his space, and we had always respected each other's space. On top of it was a strip of painter's tape, the blue kind, and on the tape in Hugh's block letters in black marker, R.O.B., try 1983. Our wedding year, the only combination I had ever known him to use. Beside the box was a brown paper bag from the Canadian Tire in Minden. Inside, 2 AA batteries and a Post-it note in his handwriting. For the flashlight, left side drawer. I checked. The flashlight was there with no batteries. He had known I would come. He had known I would not have thought to check. I did not open the box that night. I made up the bed, ate crackers standing at the counter, and looked at that blue box from across the room until the light was gone. I think I needed one night of not knowing. The way you need one last ordinary morning before the test results come in. I opened it Sunday at 7, with coffee, in the early light off the lake, 1983. It opened on the first try. Clipped inside the lid was an index card in pencil. 3 lines. Ontario Mining Registry, Claim No P41882, Royalty Trust Account, Boreal Meridian Resources Limited, Reefer. District of Cochrane, Staking Map 42A11. I had spent 33 years reading balance sheets. I knew what a trust account was. I also knew that a trust account meant money that belonged to someone, but had not yet been paid. The first folder held a copy of an original staking claim registration, dated August 9, 1979, in the name of Douglas Albert Dewar, Hugh's father, a parcel of Crown land in Cochrane District north of Timmins, 48 hectares, gold and base metals. The second folder held a transfer of claim document, signed by Hugh in May 1991, the year after Douglas died, witnessed, stamped, and at the top, in red, returned, title confirmation requealed. The third folder held correspondence. The first letter was dated April 2003. The last was dated February 19th of this year, 7 weeks before Hugh had his stroke. There were 22 letters, all addressed to Royalty Trust Administration at Boreal Meridian Resources in Timmins, all of them asking the same question in different costumes. When can the trust account for Claim P41882 be released, and what do I need to provide? I sat at that table until my coffee was cold. 22 letters, 22 years. He had misspelled succession in the first 3 before he looked it up. By 2010, the letters sounded like they were written by someone who knew the terminology. By 2020, they sounded like someone who had run out of patience, but refused to run out of letters. I had made him breakfast on many of those February mornings. I did not know what he was doing at the desk after. Mitchell called that afternoon, around 4. He was warm. He asked about the drive and whether the propane was working and whether I needed anything from Minden. Then he asked his question, twice, 8 minutes apart. Did you find any of Dad's files up there? He was always keeping things at the cottage. I said I had found a few things and was still going through them. Anything administrative? He had some mining stuff from Grandpa Douglas years ago. There's probably nothing to it. I said I would let him know. There was a pause. Then his voice shifted, not to cruelty, to something more careful than cruelty. Mom, I want to be straight with you. That road doesn't get maintained past December 1st. You've got your knee. If you're up there alone in January and something happens, that's a serious problem. Realistically, you won't last the winter up there. He caught something in the air. I mean, it's dangerous. Be realistic about what you can actually manage. I wrote down the date and time in the margin of Hugh's last letter, October 6th, 4:22 p.m. Type the word "here" in the comments so I know you're still with me. And hit subscribe, because what happens in the next 6 weeks is the reason I'm telling this story at all. I drove into Minden on the Tuesday and used the library's computer terminal for nearly 3 hours. The Ontario Mining Registry keeps its records online. Claim P41882 showed as active, last renewed February 2025, renewal paid by H. Dewar, 41 Bellwood Crescent, Oakville. He had been paying the annual renewal fee every February for 34 years. The claim sat in a producing district. A royalty stream ran to Boreal Meridian's Cochrane North operation, a small underground gold mine producing since 2001. Then I found the gap. Douglas Dewar's probate was on file with Peterborough County from 1990. The application listed a truck, a bank account, and some personal effects. It did not list the mining claim. Nobody in 1990 thought a 48-hectare parcel of Cochrane District bush had anything worth naming under it. So the transfer Hugh signed in 1991 had been returned because there was no probate order to confirm he had inherited anything. The claim sat registered in a dead man's name. The royalties went into trust year after year because there was no confirmed living owner to pay. My colleague Claudette drove up in the second week of October with a cast iron pan, 2 bottles of Ontario Red, and no warning, which is her way and always has been. We worked together for 19 years at the Spears Road office, and she does not knock. She read the letters at the kitchen table with her reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. Then she asked the question I had known was coming. "Rob, why didn't he just tell you?" I said I didn't know yet, but I had counted the letters. She let it go, which is why she is my friend. We opened one of the bottles and walked down to the water at dusk. And she said the cottage was an eyesore, and the lake was not, and both things were true. Before she left, standing in the doorway with her keys, she said, "Whatever else is in that box, you're going to want to be sitting down." I told her I was always sitting down. A man named Harlan Stokes came down Lakeview Drive on a Friday afternoon 3 weeks after I arrived. Canvas jacket, clean boots that had never seen mud, business card in his hand. Before he reached the steps, Stokes Resource Consulting, Huntsville, mineral claim acquisition, and estate title. He said he had known the Dewar name in connection with Claim P41882 for some years and had heard the estate had recently changed hands. He was pleasant. He admired the lake. He offered me $72,000 for the claim and all associated interests, cash. Closing in 2 weeks, he would handle the registry fees himself. I said I would need to think about it. He left the offer letter on the railing, weighted with a rock against the wind. I did not read it right away. I went inside and opened the blue box and found what I already knew was there. A letter dated September 2019, cream stock with the Stokes Resource Consulting letterhead. An unsolicited offer to purchase the Dewar interest in Claim P41882, $51,000. Hugh had written one word across the top in pencil, "No." I called my son that evening and mentioned that Harlan Stokes had come to the cottage. There was a pause, exactly 2 seconds, and then Mitchell said, "Oh, Harlan." Yeah, he'd been watching that claim for years. Reached out to me after the funeral. I thought it might simplify things for you, so I passed along the address. I asked when Harlan had first reached out to him. He said he didn't remember exactly. I wrote that down. Then he said the thing that changed the color of the whole autumn. He got impatient, the way he does when he wants a decision confirmed. Look, I told him there's no rush. I said she's 67, bad knee, alone on a road nobody plows. She won't last the winter up there. Just be patient. Then, a half second too late, "That's not a judgment, Mom, that's logistics." I said, "Which day did you tell him that?" He said he didn't remember exactly. I wrote that down as well. I found Anita Dosanjh through the Haliburton County legal directory. She has an office above a hardware store in Minden, 2 rooms, and she let me lay everything on her work table before she said a word. That cost her 15 minutes and bought my complete trust. She told me what I needed. Under Ontario law, you can reopen an estate for a subsequently discovered asset, file a motion in surrogate court, serve notice on interested parties. If granted, the court issues a supplemental certificate of appointment covering the omitted property. Register that certificate with the Ontario Mining Registry, and the title confirms. I sold Hugh's truck, a 2008 F-250 that had been sitting on Bellwood Crescent since March, to a contractor in Bracebridge for $4,100. I paid Anita and the court filing fee before she started. She also told me something I had not asked about. As a surviving spouse in Ontario, I had rights under the Family Law Act regarding the matrimonial home, and a signature on a mortgage document was not the same as a voluntary release of those rights. She put it in a letter. The estate motion was served on Mitchell. He did not respond. I do not think he read it. I found page 2 on a Sunday morning 6 weeks after I arrived because I was tired and less patient than usual. The folder with the return transfer felt heavier than 2 pages, tucked flat against the back inside pocket, folded twice. A third sheet in his handwriting on lined paper, dated October of last year, 5 months before he died. He wrote about the house first. In March 2022, he took out a home equity line on Bellwood Crescent and drew $83,000. He gave it to Mitchell as a deposit on a commercial property in Mississauga, a storage unit conversion that fell through in the rezoning. Mitchell paid back nothing. Hugh covered the interest payments from his pension. "And never told me," he wrote, because he was ashamed, and because he did not know how to say it without it sounding like an accusation of someone we both had to go on loving. Then he wrote about the claim. He had tried to fix the title 3 times. In 2004, the mining registry needed a probate order that didn't exist. In 2012, a Timmins lawyer quoted $4, $500, and it was the year the roof on Bellwood needed replacing. In 2019, Stokes showed up with $51,000, and Hugh had written no across the top and driven home and said nothing at dinner. Then the last paragraph, which I had to put down and pick back up twice. I didn't tell you what was in this box because every time I thought I was close to finished, something moved. And then I got sick and I ran out of close to finished. I should have handed it to you in 2004. You would have had it sorted by 2005. You spent 33 years making other people's numbers add up. I should have trusted you with mine sooner. I ran out of time to bring you the answer, so I'm bringing you the file. The rest is yours. You've always been better at this than I have been at anything except loving you, and I was good at that. I did not take his word for the debts. I checked the Ontario Land Registry online. Mortgage registered 2019, principal $490,000. HELOC registered March 2022, credit limit $85,000. Both in Hugh Dewar's name alone. I requested payoff statements through Anita. First mortgage balance at date of death, $461,230. HELOC balance, $82,400. Total encumbrances, $543,630 against a $1.3 million property. The estate account that Prentice and Carlaw had disclosed, $47,880. I emailed the firm one question: would the estate retire the encumbrances on the Bellwood property before distribution? The associate answered the next day. Under Ontario's Succession Law Reform Act, a specific devise passes subject to encumbrances unless the will expressly directs otherwise. The will did not direct otherwise. The debt traveled with the house. I read that email standing in the driveway with one bar of signal, said nothing out loud, and went inside and made tea. The surrogate court heard the motion on a Thursday in late November. Anita appeared. The judge granted the supplemental certificate of appointment in 11 minutes. 2 days later, I stood at the Ontario Mining Registry window in Timmins and registered the certificate along with a transmission application, confirming the claim had passed to me as surviving spouse. The clerk stamped it and said, "Claim P41882, registered to Dewar, Roberta Ann." I said thank you and went and sat in the truck for a few minutes with the heater running. That afternoon, I called Boreal Meridian's royalty department. The woman who answered was named Phyllis, and she had the voice of someone who had answered this particular category of call enough times to have made a kind of peace with it. I gave her the claim number. She confirmed the title update had come through that morning. Then she said, "Mrs. Dewar, the trust account for this claim. Do you want me to go through the balance with you?" I said yes. She said the balance was $487,340 even, plus accrued interest of $11,218. I asked her to say it again. She said it again. Going forward, the royalty share at current production averaged $2,080 a month. The trust balance would release in the next payment run, approximately 3 weeks. I thanked her. She asked, before we finished, whether I was related to the gentleman who had been writing to them every February for 20 years. I held the phone against my shoulder for a moment. I said that was my husband. She said, he was very persistent. Then off the script, "I'm sorry for your loss." Mitchell called that week to say he was hosting Thanksgiving at Bellwood. Would I like to come? I said I would. I baked butter tart squares on Saturday in the cottage oven. Sunday morning, I loaded the truck. The blue lockbox went on the back seat under my coat. Combination reset to 1983, same as he left it. I drove 4 hours south on the same road in the other direction. The trees past Barrie were bare. The Tim Hortons in Barrie was full. There were 24 people in the kitchen and connected living room when I arrived. I counted while I hung up my coat, because counting keeps my hands steady. The island. The one with the fossil grain in the quartz that Hugh had stood in a showroom choosing, because it reminded him of a creek behind his father's place up north, had a charcuterie board on it and a bottle of Niagara Riesling. Harlan Stokes was near the patio doors with a glass of red wine. He saw me and raised it slightly. Mitchell brought me in with his hand between my shoulder blades. Everybody. My mom. She's been up at the cottage all fall, living the lakeside retirement dream. People laugh the way people do. I set the butter tart squares on the counter. Then I went back out to the truck and brought in the blue box and set it beside the charcuterie board on the fossil grain island. Mitchell looked at it. "Mom, what is that?" I asked him for 2 minutes. He said it wasn't the right moment. So I said it again at exactly the same volume, and the room did what rooms do when a woman does not raise her voice. It went quiet in a circle that kept widening. I opened the box. I set 4 documents on the island side by side. On November 28th, the Surrogate Court of Ontario issued a supplemental certificate of appointment for Douglas Dewar's estate, covering an asset omitted from the 1990 probate. It's registered with the Ontario Mining Registry. I put down the confirmation. Staking claim P41882 is in my name. Boreal Meridian Resources has been paying royalties into a trust account on that claim since 2001. The balance is $487,000. I set down the trust account statement. It releases in 10 days. Royalties going forward average $2,100 a month. Nobody said anything. The photographer by the window stopped moving. I turned toward the patio doors. "Mr. Stokes, you said it to me twice this fall. Nobody pays you for dirt you can't see." I held up his offer letter and read paragraph 5 aloud. The one that captured all accumulated royalty proceeds as part of the transferred interest. All of it. "You offered me $72,000 for an account you knew held $487,000. He set the wine glass on the shelf and walked out through the front hall without his jacket. The door closed quietly behind him. Mitchell hit the island with the flat of his hand. Glasses jumped. "Dad didn't even know that thing was worth anything." I said. "He knew for 22 years. He wrote them a letter every February." Then I laid down 3 more pages. "This is the registered mortgage balance on this house at your father's date of death, $461,230. I set down the payoff statement. "This is the home equity line he opened in March of 2022, $82,400 outstanding. He drew it for you, for the Mississauga deal. You made no payments." Someone near the fireplace said something very quietly. "That is $543,000 in registered charges against a $1.3 million property. The estate account has $47,000. Under the Succession Law Reform Act, that debt travels with the specific devise. The will does not direct exoneration." I set down the section printout. "The estate does not clear it for you." Mitchell was looking at the island, at the fossil pattern in the quartz. I said it in the same voice I used for 33 years reading quarterly summaries to clients who did not want to hear what the numbers said. "Your property taxes on this address are $11,400 a year. Your mortgage and line payments at current rates are approximately $4,000 a month. That is $63,000 a year to carry a house with $540,000 in registered debt on it. Those numbers do not negotiate." I let that sit for 3 seconds. "You told me I wouldn't last the winter. On October 6th, at 4:22 in the afternoon, you told Harlan Stokes the same thing, in a business conversation, about an asset." I wrote down the date. I held up the notation in the margin of Hugh's last letter. That sentence was not worry, it was a calculation. I put the box under my arm, collected my coat from the closet, and said goodbye to the people I recognized. I drove 4 hours north in the dark. The heater in the truck worked fine. Harlan Stokes never called again. Anita sent him a letter in early December, requesting all further contact come through her office. He signed the return card. She told me his paragraph 5 was not illegal. It was simply the reason you read past page 1. The trust account released on December 12th. $498,558 wired to a credit union account I had opened in Minden. I set aside a third for CRA because it all comes in during one tax year and Revenue Canada is unmoved by context. I have done other people's taxes for 33 years. I was not going to be surprised by my own. Mitchell listed the Bellwood house on December 3rd at $1,200,000. $100,000 under the August appraisal in a slow winter market, carrying $4,000 a month in debt service. As of the day I am telling you this, there has been one showing and no offers. That arithmetic has its own patience. I sent my son one letter. I wrote that I was not angry, because anger is something you carry, and I have carried enough ledgers for one lifetime. I wrote there would be no loans, no guarantees, no co-signing of anything, and that all contact about his father's estate should go through Anita Dosanjh in Minden. Then I wrote the last line twice before I got the words right. The door is open the day you can tell me when you decided I was worth more to you as an obstacle than as a person. Until then, we are fine at a distance. I sealed it and mailed it on a Tuesday. I had a roofer come in April. $24,000, new steel roof, 40-year warranty, signed and paid. The soft spot in the kitchen floor is scheduled for June. The wood stove has been inspected and cleaned, and I have used it twice already, which is exactly as satisfying as I thought it would be. The heater in the main room still clicks 3 times before the flame catches. I count them out loud now without noticing. 1, 2, 3. The way you hum a song you learned so young, you can't remember ever not knowing it. The blue box is on top of the bookshelf with the lid open. I keep receipts in it. Plow contract, propane. The mining registry confirmation with my name on it, because I am not going to be the next person in this family who cannot prove what she owns. The suitcase is in the closet. I am not planning to need it. He wrote me 22 letters before he had the right answer. He ran out of time to bring me the answer, so he brought me the file and trusted me to know what to do with it. I spent 33 years making other people's numbers add up. It turns out I was practicing. If this story made you think of a document you have been putting off reading, a will, a deed, a policy, anything in a drawer you have walked past for years, go and read it. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below, subscribe, and I will see you next time.